Who's there?
All right. I just started recording, so
It was
which is okay.
that was a sort of a first line joke. Didn't come off there well. Sorry.
I thought it was funny.
We got it.
I love it. This is the cast reunion of Hamlet, which we did in the year of our Lord 2019.
So long ago.
It does feel like a long time ago. This is
The before
recent.
time.
Yeah, it's like one of the last shows in the before times.
So
pretty
much. Yeah.
I'm glad we got a chance to do it. I'm glad we didn't schedule this show for 2020 for like fall of 2020. That would have been a bummer.
That would have been awkward.
But we squeaked it in. So
you got it squeaked in just in the right time.
Yeah, like perfect timing.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I'm like a little bit like off. This is like a different role because normally I'm just the moderator, but I'm the moderator and also it was in the cast. So the way we normally start this is we say our names and the characters that we played, and just once you say yours, pass it off to whoever you want to go next. I'll start since I'm talking already. My name is Tammy and I played Hamlet. Sophie.
Hi, I'm Sophie and I played Horatio, and I'll send it to the ghost.
Hi, I'm Ryan Seacack, and I was the ghost among other people. Ghost first player and Gravedigger.
Gravedigger.
I remember. I know what I did.
Second Gravedigger.
Second Gravedigger. Let's send it to Gravedigger number 1. Winfield.
Oh, yes. Hello.
Forgot who it
I'm
was.
Winfield Swanson. I was the first Gravedigger and various other things, including a soldier, player king. Yeah, and I think that was about it. Oh, and the ambassador from England.
There it is.
I think.
I thought there was something else.
Ari.
You're muted.
I'm Ari, and now I'm unmuted. And I played Ophelia. And now Carson.
Hi, I'm Carson. I played Marcellus, the player queen, and Osric. Rebecca.
I am Rebecca Magnata, and I played Rosencrantz. I'm going to send it to Mike Alper.
Thanks. I'm Mike Alper, and I played Polonius. And I got to be Ari's dad again. I'll pass on to Christine, who's the only one left, right? I think we've gone through everybody. Hey, Christine.
Thank you, Mike. I was a stage manager, and it was my first and interesting incorporation into many aspects of the theater, and I enjoyed it very much. I'll pass it to whoever is out there.
I think we've pretty much all introduced ourselves. So it's been interesting. I've done like a couple of these cast reunions so far, and each cast has its own dynamic. Even though the same people overlap in different casts, like each group has its own dynamic, and I feel like our dynamic is the delightfully awkward people.
Yep.
Hey, yo.
What do you mean? What do you
We're
mean
like-
by that?
I think
But where did that come from? That's what we lead off on? We're all delightfully awkward?
I'll
Yes,
take
I
it.
like that.
Like,
Yeah,
that's
I-
a good way to
I-
start.
At least she said delightfully, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna get
At
some
least
t-shirts
she gave
made
us
with
that.
Delightfully awkward.
That was actually my
I love it.
That was my character concept for the ghost, was delightfully awkward.
I love it.
The character concept for Rosencrantz was the Berries and Cream Starburst commercial, or Skittles commercial, whatever one it was. And if that doesn't scream delightfully awkward.
Perhaps drinking tea out of a gravy boat does.
This is a mug.
It's a mug.
Guys, we're already off the rails.
Wait, Rebecca, I want to see the cute thing. Rebecca,
It's an
Rebecca
owl
wants to
mug.
see
Oh
your
my
mug.
God, you'd
Oh,
love it.
that's cute.
I've had so many
I
owl
love
mugs over the
owls.
course
Okay,
of
I'm
my
gonna
life,
go now.
and this one's, I
Sorry.
think, the only
Love
living
that.
one right
Doing
now.
a terrible job moderating this one.
Gravy boat.
Yeah, Hamlet, get control of Denmark, would you please?
I don't know why we thought
Something
that
rotten.
I have called this meeting. No. Let's start at the beginning. Let's rewind. Let's talk about origin stories here. And the reason we did Hamlet is because we had previously done a production of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. One person of whom is representative of that cast. I don't know where the other person is, but maybe she'll be
Half rep.
Oh, Sophie was
Yes.
Sophie had a monologue at the end of
That's
this.
right.
I was Polonius in that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We were all in that
Oh, I
too.
forgot that.
We were all in that too. I feel like I'm so ill-equipped to actually talk about Hamlet because looking back, I was like, ooh, let's think of my favorite Hamlet memories. And all of them are like, was it Hamlet though? Was it really? Or was it Rosencrantz and Guildenstern? I have no idea. Let's see how this goes.
Well, they all blended together. And so I just wonder what, like, the reason why we did Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead is because you and Laura were like passionate to do it. So if you could talk like really briefly about why you were passionate to do that show and like how your character's dynamic developed between the two of you and how that led into like how you were enduring Hamlet.
Okay, so I love Rosencrantz and Guildenstern as a show, and I always thought that Rosencrantz would be sort of this beautiful, fun clown character to play that would sort of challenge me. And on the first day of our senior year of acting class, so as an introduction for the teacher, our professor was like, "Give me your name and your dream role, right?" And I said Rosencrantz from Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and Laura Kennedy, who is I've known for many years beforehand, came up to me and was like, I should be Guildenstern. And I was like, oh, that would be fun. And then 6 months later, she had smooth talked Chris Simpson into making it happen. And it did. It worked out. And I mean, it was a show that both of us had talked about and or were excited about. And it's just, based on Hamlet and sort of the futility of life. And we did a fun job. And we lost the accents between the shows, right? But so much of what we did in Hamlet was pretty much, I don't want to say exactly the same, but it's the only time I've ever sort of revamped a character or played a character again where I was like, this is the same guy. And there was a crush on Gertrude that developed in Rosencrantz and Hamlet that I didn't expect. Oh my God. And that was what's fun about it too, is like, it was just kind of such a small part that was based on this big sort of like existential clown show that we did, that I got to sort of like theorize and take to places. And walking on stage one night during rehearsals, it was like, Gertrude is the prettiest mommy in the world. And that's what I ran with the whole show. That was losing the accents and developing a crush on Gertrude was the biggest sort of development from beginning to end. But I don't want to talk about like just because I could just hijack this and make this Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and Hamlet round 2, but I don't want to. We have to do more than that.
I mean, well, I wanted to bring it up because I think that's part of the reason why this version of Hamlet was so successful.
Yeah.
Is because it started on the premise that the minor characters are very important and that they're have to be very fleshed out, because it started with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern being very, very fleshed out.
If you let me, I will let this all be about Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and I can't do that. There are other people here, please.
But one thing I want to say is that it makes me really proud that you did this production of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and I played Hamlet in that, and that was the inverse, where you had characters that were the minor characters in Hamlet now have their own whole show, and then you have the major characters in Hamlet are kind of minor characters in Rosgill, but we approached it the same way in that they all have to feel important. And so people watched Rosgill and they were like, you know what, I would watch that version of Hamlet. So great, good for me. I benefited greatly.
I think one of the ways that really informed Hamlet is that oh, there's a deer walking right outside my window.
Pennsylvania deer.
Yeah, like
Nice.
just walked right by, like 8 feet away from me. Anyway, that it really highlighted the comedy. I mean, like all the if you teach Shakespeare, one of the things that always comes up is that Hamlet has lots of comedy in it, but I've never seen a production that was genuinely funny. And one of the things that so many people who saw our production of Hamlet said was, it was really, really moving at the end, which I was really proud of, because I've never seen a production of Hamlet that made me choke up at the end. But this one made a lot of people choke up at the end, but it was, they laughed throughout. And that, I think, is really true to the essence of Hamlet itself. And I think having sort of prepped the ground for it with Rosgill, and sort of just walking into the play with so many of the cast already saying, yeah, there's a lot of funny stuff in there already. I think that just made us more comfortable with that wide diversity of tones that's in the play.
Antic disposition.
So we're free to be funny.
Yeah.
Like that, I love being, I still feel like I was the funniest Polonius I've ever seen.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I remember Chris talking about wanting to play up all of those dynamics. So like the beginning of the show, we really pared down the text of that first scene to just be really like Carson, Winfield, and I on a dark stage shouting about, and then the ghost happens and it's all very fast. So that you have this sort of intense moment of fear and terror that propels you into the whole rest of the show and sort of sets the tone as well.
Yeah, I just say, I mean, it was such an energetic production, and I think that's another thing that it really kind of springboarded off of the production of Rosgill. Is and I didn't. Oh, by the way, I mentioned this to Chris months ago at the beginning of the pandemic. I was spending a lot of time watching streaming, theater productions that were streaming, and like the Globe Theatre in London was doing like weekly streams, and they did a production of Hamlet that was very, very much like ours. I said, there's like, they had the same idea,
Yes.
and even the cuts, even the edits were almost identical.
Oh, wow.
It was uncanny. I mean, except for, like lines here and there, but the, chunks of like half of like one of the scenes, my big scene with, or Polonius's big scene with sending his servant to spy on Laertes. We cut all of that, and they cut all of that in this one. And it had the same sense of really intense energy and variety of tone and this sort of antic quality. So yeah, that's what we did. They had the same idea.
They sent spies.
Amazing.
I almost wondered. No, I think their production. It was an archive production. So
We sent
it's
spies.
Great minds. Great minds.
Watch the archives.
Yeah.
I would just like to say that in the beginning, like I've never really experienced any kind of theatrical Shakespearean thing, and the first obviously the only ones I have experienced have been through the CTC, and I praise them for that immensely. But one of the funnest things and the most moving things I ever dealt with was Rosencrantz, and and that show, and to see it resurrected again through Hamlet as like a continuation and a more complete sense of thing. It was just amazing for me. It was very, very, very moving, and almost feel like I felt the story incomplete. Like I said, like I got like a more sense of all the characters the way they should have been, and it was just amazing. All very, very, very moving, and it was just both stories kind of blended together so immensely, and to be able to see it from a different point of view each time, like being like stage manager, my whatever, it was kind of like, wow, to see everything from a different point of view, to see how actually Hamlet, the most amazing piece of work, come together and be cut down and cut down and cut down and cut down. In every meeting we had is like, oh, cut down, but yet remains so complete that everybody that didn't really have a theatrical background could really comprehend. It was cut so much, but so perfectly. It was just a great experience.
I'm just going to take issue with
it really was. It just made it for me, and to deal with the people that I dealt with that made these characters like really come to life and explain this wonderful story. It was great. It was just great. And I'm just proud to have been every single part of it.
I would just take issue with saying it wasn't, I mean, they cut a lot, but most of the parts that were cut are parts that regularly get cut. Like, I know Chris would apologize every time he'd say, I know all this political stuff is really fascinating. It'd be really, if we had all the time, it'd be great. But they're the parts that everybody snoozes through.
It was just, it
so
just
all
brought it
the
to
whole
its simplicity. It just brought it to its simplistic beauty for me. The way it was presented, it was just so, just like, okay, I get this. Everybody can get this.
And part of that is the acting.
Great.
I mean, more than just cutting the text to make it understandable is really making sure that the actors who are playing all the characters understand what they're saying and what they mean. And we focus so much on that, and it was, when we made the cuts, it was all just getting rid of the stuff that we really didn't connect to and mean. And it was all, this sort of political stuff. Yeah. It's like, really, it's so funny to read all of the books that are like, it's really important to think about all the political stuff that's happening with Fortinbras because no one understands why he comes back at the end. And it's like, I guess nobody gets the end of Hamlet, but it really doesn't matter that much, does it?
But the way it was broken down to just like, this is how a family like feels with a family, and to just break it down to like the way people feel as people was amazing.
That's one of the things that I really give Chris an enormous amount of credit for, because how often especially in the early, like the first half of the rehearsal period, he'd always bring us back to, don't just recite the words. That if you're not connected, if they do not feel motivated by who the character is and where they are at that moment, it's not even worth saying them. So, like as you were saying, Rebecca, if you weren't connecting to it, then we deemed it, because it took us a really short while, I feel, for everybody in the cast to feel immersed in the roles, to be connected to the roles. So if at a certain point, after we were a few weeks into it, if you were, going through a part of a scene where you were just saying the words, then it was clear that that was not part of how you were conceiving the character or that scene. And so it was extraneous. It didn't need to be there anymore.
I felt personally like I don't know if anyone else felt this, but I felt a big responsibility to the show, like to do it right. I felt like you're kind of alluding to that there's certain ways that people go about Shakespeare, and especially the most commonly done Shakespeare plays, where they just kind of like, it is kind of rote and you kind of expect it and there's no surprises, and like you don't really feel like you have to dig deep into any individual characters. You just kind of like have to do the thing. And I felt like such a responsibility that there's a right way to do this play, and it's the way that we were going about it. Like, I'm glad we went about it that way. It's
amazing.
Making it about the family and making it about the relationships and making everybody human. That was like what I loved so much about doing the play, but also interacting with everyone, is that everyone felt so human and honest and real. Even like I loved I loved doing scenes with all of you. I got the chance to do scenes with all of you, so that was really great. But like doing scenes with Rebecca and Laura, and like having them be so the dynamic between them was so crazy, but so honest. And like Laura was always like this like anchor point, and like Rebecca was always this like crazy puppy or something. And I
Just
never
out
knew
wherever.
what to expect. But it
Controlled
was so,
explosion.
but we had the vibe of like that relationship. Like those two have a clearly defined relationship, and the three, Hamlet, Rosencrantz, Guildenstern, have a clearly defined relationship. And I like believed it. And when they came on stage, I was like, yes, here are my crazy buddies.
Yeah, you're the dudes who lived in the same dorm as you in college, you know? You wouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
then-
Yeah.
Winfield.
That may
sorry.
be another thing that is kind of a carryover from you guys having done Rosgill first, because in a sense, one of the ideas of that play is, even though we're all fictional characters within the confines of this fictional space, we're all people.
We're
Yes.
Like
living,
even the
breathing
minor
people.
characters who die off
It's so
stage
real.
in a line
so real.
have lives that
Yes.
matter to them.
Yeah.
And
There was a
that
point,
was how
at least
every one of
one.
us.
There was at least one night where, and maybe it happened multiple nights, where there's obviously a line in the play that's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. Spoiler alert, they die. And that's what the title of the other play was. But there's
My
a
line, I
Hamlet.
think.
Yeah.
Sadness.
Yeah, I think you did.
In this Hamlet version, I think it was, but there was at least one night when somebody said, Winfield, I guess, said Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, and someone in the audience, it might have been Katya, was like, oh, sad that they died. And I was like,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
how you know.
Katya
that,
was
like,
super mad
we
about
did-
that. I
we were
remember
so
that.
bad. That's how you know we did like a good job, because people get sad when Rosencrantz and Guildenstern died.
Why did they kill those dumb little idiots? I liked them. You know?
Sense of that.
Well, it's
Like,
a tragedy.
also talk-
Everybody has to die at the
Everybody
end.
But
has to
that's
die.
the thing. What's the sense of so much of it? The
Right.
tragedy of so
Yeah.
much of it
And
is
it-
unnecessary.
And it like matters too,
But
because
it was
I mean,
wonderful.
we weren't stuffy about it either, you know. We weren't trying to
No.
put on these sort of Shakespearean personas at any
No.
point.
No.
It was just human
So
beings acting
real.
like human beings. And sometimes the sentences
real.
that you say are a little weird, but you kind of just treat it like a dialect. Like it's like, it's an accent. I'll deal with it. I'm still a people, you know?
No.
I think that's important too, because like for me, like for anybody, I guess when you do theater, it's supposed to produce a feeling and an emotion in the audience. And when you leave Hamlet, it's a tragedy. You should feel sad, because a lot of people have died, and that should make you feel something. And a lot of innocent people have died, and a lot of nasty people have died, but a lot of innocent people have died. And you give that weight by like fleshing out those relationships. And so I kind of want to talk to Ari a little bit, because that character of Ophelia is like normally such a throwaway character, and it's so unfortunate. And I think in our production, like I unfortunately didn't get to see a lot of what you did, because I was getting abducted by pirates or whatever. But
So
like
beautiful.
do you want to just talk about like how you approached Ophelia, and like how you made her such an important character, and with the relationship with like Polonius as well?
Yeah, so Ophelia was a real challenge. Unlike some of the other, like I've played Juliet before, and that was a completely different thing from Ophelia. Completely. Both like really desperately in love, but also got their things, you know? And so I think when I started Ophelia, I was really blinded by act 2, or our act 2, like her madness. And I was really intimidated by that and was focusing all on that, trying to like understand it. But what I really needed to do was just go back and understand her before she got mad. And it completely external forces that made this happen to her. So she is still wholly herself when she is crazy. So getting herself in my body and her relationships with her brother, my brother. Oh my God, I am so sad that Ben is not here.
I know.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah.
Sadness.
Those
I mean,
relationships,
Just like Laertes, late for every war.
What the heck?
like those relationships were never really something that I took note of when I read Hamlet, but go like really narrowing down this path of Ophelia, I like really had to understand who she was in order to understand what was taken away from her at the end, you know?
That's it. It's
That's
like
right. I think
making her a person, making her a human being rather than just like a means to an end. I think in a lot of productions, she's just like a means to an end. She's just like a thing to illustrate that Hamlet's a jerk or whatever.
Right. Yeah. It's just to show how I'm literally just to show how everyone's choices have consequences. And it all happens to me.
Yeah, it's like she's just a sacrificial victim. That's why I think the way in which you and Ben played that first scene is like that establishes it, because the affection between those two characters is just, that foregrounds is like, these are two young people who are, siblings who love each other. And that makes everything that happens to them, every bad thing that happens to them afterwards, make you aware this is a loss to somebody.
In the funeral scene, I like, as soon as I got lowered down, like Ben jumped in there with me, and hearing him freak out, and I'm like just laying down there watching everyone fight all around me, and it was like I have goosebumps just thinking about it.
That was always one of my favorite scenes.
But I have to say, I can't think about it is I, Hamlet the Dane, and Tammy pointing out, why does he tell us he's a Dane? We're all Dane. Oh no, I think it was Ryan who said, we're all Danes.
Yeah.
So I can't think of that one without laughing.
I think well, that's the thing, right? Because like Hamlet does a lot of crazy stuff and says like a lot of like over the top stuff. And I think in that scene in particular, because he says some really bombastic things, hi, it's I, Hamlet the Dane, and the dog will have his day and all this stuff, and jumped in and fighting next to the grave, that people treat that scene like very lightly, or they think it's like a goof or that it's melodramatic or something. And like we never approached it that way. It's, you have this young woman who's died, and that's awful, and everybody feels terrible, and Hamlet's coming back and realizing like, oh crap, I loved her. He says he loves her, so you have to believe it. Like you could say maybe he doesn't, but I think you have to believe it. And like he's surprised by the fact that she's dead, and it's like, so it's really sad.
I also, Tammy, I felt like the way you played it, like it's almost like Hamlet is even surprised in that scene at how much he loved her when she's gone. I mean, that's one of the things that really came through. There's like, oh my God, this now that she's dead, I realize how much I actually loved her.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really, it's tragic. It's a tragedy. You gotta make people feel that tragedy.
It's also in a stylistic sense meant to be jarring, I think, because it comes right after the comic bit with me and Ryan and as the Gravediggers, and doing the repartee with Hamlet showing up.
Can we talk a little bit also about the Gravediggers, because like,
oh my God, yes, please.
Another thing that I feel like the clowns in Shakespeare are just, a lot of times people don't know how to handle them. They're so into the tragedy of the play or whatever that they just don't know how to handle the clowns. And oh my goodness, that was for me. I was going to ask if people had like, particular scenes that they look forward to. And that was one that I always, like Sophie was with me, and I'd always be like peeking through to watch you guys do the Gravedigger scene, because it was so good.
I love that we never knew how far the skull was gonna go, and you tossed it, and it was always kind of like, it was so sharp.
Where is it?
Yeah, Winfield, could you just deliver it the way you did on stage? Just say she's dead. She's dead.
Oh God, the lines.
Winfield.
Faith, sir, one who what? One who was a woman, sir, but rest her soul, she's dead.
So that's like the key of like good clowning is like you don't belabor the joke. You
Right.
just say it in like a matter of fact way. And you and Ryan were such a good like counterpoint. I wonder if
Oh,
did that come easily to you, or did you have to like really work at that, or
To Winfield and I?
yeah?
Yes to both questions.
oh my God. Yeah.
It came easily, and I had to work at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Seems
sounds
on
about
brand
right.
for the show.
I actually agree with that. I mean, because Winfield and I had kind of done this before, right? I mean, different tones certainly, but Winfield and I had clowned around before in Death of an Anarchist, right? So there was an extent to which this was this was sort of something that he and I had been through before. But yeah, no, I actually wholeheartedly endorse his assessment. You know, I think it came very naturally, and I think also it did require a lot of work. I don't know, because it was because you know, with clowning, right? You're right. You don't really like sit in any joke, but also, you know, clowning really is sort of more naturalistic than people find, because it's really more about committing to the emotion of the moment than it is anything else, because it's the vulnerability that makes clowning approachable to people, and it's that takes work. I mean, being able to do that on stage is not easy at all.
It's also somehow a lot more dependent upon the audience. Like if the audience isn't with it, it can just die. And so I was always very pleased that I was able to get out a couple of laughs, especially with the business about throwing the skull and the singing and the shovel and the
yeah, I mean, it comes at like a hard time in the play. Like we're already like 2 hours in. Like if you haven't cut it, it's probably 3 hours in at this point. We're like getting to the end of the play, and it's still so much more to the play. Like Act 5 is like so long. So you like kind of wake everybody up and like change the tone, and people are like, what's going on with these two?
And then
I
it
thought that
shifts
was
back
so
into the
refreshing.
funeral again.
Yeah,
Right.
and then boom, like, oh no, what's happening? Oh no, Ophelia died.
Really dramatic right there.
Yeah.
It does make it interesting to sort of stand there and observe the entire funeral scene, because like Winfield and I spent that entire scene just sort of moving around everyone, kind of not really knowing what to do with each other.
Yeah, awkward.
Yeah, no, that was awkward. That was, but intentionally so.
It's one of my
awkward,
favorite scenes of the whole show. I have to say. One of many, but one of my favorites.
Definitely. I want to talk to Ryan like a little bit, because you had like all these, you had 3 very different and like also very demanding roles. And
I enjoyed all of them.
Yeah, you knocked them out of the park, but I wonder if there was any one of them that was like harder than the others, or that you liked more, or that gave different challenges, or
Oh, they all had different challenges, but that's part of what I actually, Chris once asked me before he did this to me, you know, like what I liked doing on stage, and I had the lack of foresight to tell him that I actually really enjoy playing multiple roles on stage. This is all, yeah, no, look what I did to myself.
Yeah.
But I actually enjoy the challenge of doing it, particularly in this case, because you know, there's an extent to which it's interesting to hear all of you listening to sort of how sort of human your characters felt, because there's honestly this extent to which, while you know, I worked hard to find emotional content for all of those characters, all 3 of them were also 3 of perhaps the most heightened characters that are in the play.
yes.
Because, you know, even the first player is sort of outside of everything going on around him. And he is probably the most human of the 3 characters that I played. I mean, technically I was Fortinbras right at the very end, but who remembers? But the
Because they only
You
me. Yeah.
yelled at
Carson
me.
remember, because Carson was the only person. Carson and Sophie were the only people left alive.
And I threatened Carson, and I was like, God, what a waste looking at Hamlet. I know Sophie got mad at me on stage about that, but the ghost, they were all very, very different, which was part of what made this very really interesting to do for me personally, just in terms of like the artistic endeavor of it, because the ghost is just a ghost. I almost said otherworldly, and that would have been terrible.
So
a ghost was better.
I loved playing the ghost scenes with you because they were so intense. and you're like, your ghost, you're otherworldly, but the way we staged it, it was very what's the word? It was very
visceral.
Visceral, yeah, it was
Visceral,
very
right.
visceral. And we had this thing where, and especially in the first ghost scene that you were in with me, you touched me, and it was like, I had the idea of like feeling all this crazy like supernatural energy going through me every time you touched me. And then like later on in the Gertrude scene, you come up behind me and you just give me this like bear hug, and like it's like this jolt of like fatherly like crazy energy. And it was so, I feel like those were some of the most like electric scenes like in the play, because it was so like, because it was so heightened but also so honest. It was like unreal.
That Gertrude scene, the scene between you and Gertrude that I intrude on probably was my favorite scene in the show. It was also one of the ones that I was always the most nervous about, because I was horrified that I would screw up the timing coming through the curtain to grab you, which would ruin that scene, because we had done it in rehearsal where I had screwed up the timing and the scene did not work at all. And so I spent the entire run of that show terrified that I was going to screw it up during the run. Thankfully, I don't think I ever did. But the ghost provided, the ghost was like, it was interesting to sort of experience a character that was, all they could really experience were these hyper intense emotions, or all they could really project or onto people were these hyper intense emotional experiences. And it made it really interesting to be on stage with anyone. And it certainly gave it gave me a lot to work with in terms of creating or trying to create a very visceral experience for the other people who were on stage with me, which usually was you, but I did get to ruin everyone's day under the stage.
Yes.
And while I was not acting, while that was not technically acting, I suppose, that still was one of my favorite things to do in this show.
Yeah. I don't, Carson and Sophie, you want to talk about running around the stage with the ghosts under?
That was
I
so
felt like
great.
it was so hard. Like to me, that was like the hardest scene in the play to figure out.
I think for me, it unfortunately was just hard because like the dialogue is one of those scenes where it's the same text repeated multiple times, but just slightly different. And so if you didn't do it exactly correct, the whole thing kind of lost its rhythm. But the most fun was, we had like a portion of the stage was cut out, and so part of the joke, not the joke, but like part of the excitement and the energy of it was to have Ryan as the ghost. Like, did you kick or did you do it with your hands?
I pushed with my legs and my hands.
Oh, with both.
Yeah.
Okay. Was to like be under the stage and kind of rattle this loose part of the stage that we were kind of standing on. And there was just sometimes where I was
standing on it.
Yeah. But there was sometimes where I was genuinely surprised and terrified when it happened, which was great.
I was waiting backstage because I'm in the next scene, and I could see the audience, like behind the arras, you could see one side of the audience or the other. And I always loved that bit because there were members of the audience who would just jump when the trap door bounces.
Yeah.
I love that because, again, that's one of those scenes, like with this whole play, there's people who aren't really familiar with it, but like you take it for granted. And it's like the point of that scene, part of it is that there's a ghost running around freaking everybody out. And so Chris was so smart and to stage it in such a way that was really old school, but also like, no, we're gonna have the ghost freak everybody out because that's what the point of the scene is.
And I love that it was just a low tech way of doing it. It's like there were no special effects. It was like, you know, the actor hammering on the bottom of the stage.
Ryan like pulling himself around underneath the freaking floors.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised. I'm surprised, Ryan, that you.
We did that because
that was great.
Chris looked at me and said, "You can't go that fast." And I said, "Absolutely, I can."
That's what, Ryan. I was actually surprised that you said that was one of your favorite scenes because whenever I'd see you like drag yourself out from under the stage after, say, "Oh man, I'm glad I don't have to do anything like that."
Dude, I'm a little claustrophobic. Where anything was coming from, it's like there's no way he could move that fast.
During the
candlelit
run, right? During the candlelit run, which it's incredible to me that we haven't brought up by this point now.
Well, I was gonna say we have to soon.
Right. But that was the first time that I saw a lot of the beginning of the play because you don't come in till so much later. You can't really sit and watch in the audience. Be like, do you mind if I snag a spare seat? But it's a little bit easier when it's the candlelight run. We're all in the audience. I have never been more real afraid than like being on the stage, like eating my metaphorical actor popcorn. Like, I wonder how the first scene goes. And there's no lighting effects. There's no nothing. It's just punch. Oh, no.
So great.
Goes for real.
I'll tell you, like for me, like Ryan pulling yourself around underneath the stage at that point, it was like banging and making noises and being like stage manager, being able to be like a part of like backstage where a lot of you people weren't able to be, and sitting back there and watching the people. It was like a phenomenal. And also at the same time, always being in the wrong spot where Ryan needs to come out. It's like, get out of
the way. Every time, every single time.
I remember.
Sorry, Ben.
I remember always watching.
I got so mesmerized by watching the show every single time. It was hard for me to like remember, oh, shit, I was supposed to do something because I got so mesmerized in watching it and then having the ability to watch, to be able to look at that crack through the curtain and like look at the audience at the same time and watch how they're perceiving it. It was amazing. And unfortunately, so many times it screwed with me because it's like, I'm sitting here watching and it's like, oh snap, I was supposed to do something. I'm sorry. But it was so amazing all the time.
So we should talk about the candlelight show.
Yeah, we're gonna lose some of you in a minute, but like let's talk about doing it by candlelight. So like our last rehearsal was all by candlelight. We shut off like all the lights, like the actual lights, and so the only light we had was candles along like each side of the stage. And I wonder what that felt like for you all. It was like very intense for me.
That is honestly one of my favorite experiences on stage of any stage production I've done. You wouldn't think, it's one of those things that had you asked me about it beforehand, I would have told you I have no idea why that would change my experience of being on stage. I couldn't possibly tell you. And then we did it, and I thought to myself, I sort of don't ever want to do this play a different way again.
Yeah.
And it was cool that we got to do it for an audience at the end as well.
Yeah, I was really glad we got to. One of the things that I think the reason why that worked, the reason why that was a really powerful way to have our last rehearsal, and why we are all so excited about the prospect of getting to do it that way for an audience at the end too, was because I didn't feel that it was all that different from the regular performances in one sense, because it pared it down to the words and the feelings. And because that was what we were, forefronting in the production anyway, it was just like, okay, so we're doing about costumes and lighting and all that, because the performances are still mostly the same. There was a different kind of energy, but just like, there's a different energy depending on what kind of audience there is. So it's like, we're purifying the play to its essence, which was already there in the way in which we were thinking of the production. During the pandemic, one of the plays versions of Shakespeare that I watched was the Peter Brook, the film of the production of Hamlet that he did like 20 or 30 years ago at a theater in Paris, that stripped it down. It's like he cut out a whole lot of it, cut it way more radically than ours was. And said, it was really, he was trying to get at just the essence of Hamlet, the character, and it was such a snooze. It's like, okay, he had the idea that he's going to pare it down to its essence. So the candlelit production was our version of paring it down to its essence, so that we carried that with us in all of the regular performances. So we never lost sight of what the essence was.
Yeah. And that sort of like that essence brought the ending real home for me, because normally there was a lot going on at the end. But when we did that candlelit production and like Hamlet takes his last breath, it was just silence, like true silence.
Did we turn off the air conditioning system?
Yes, we did. It was hot as jeepers in the room.
And quiet.
It was hot and quiet. Yeah. It's like crazy to think, though. It's like the thing that really like sort of like sells it and brings it home for me is like this sense of, there are so many of us who have also done Shakespeare on the patio in the summertime, right? And one of the right, pretty much everybody here has in some way, shape, or form. And one of the coolest things about being on the patio is being able to sort of light the tiki torches. And there's something very ritualistic and like connective about knowing like, yes, at the Globe, when they were doing this the first time, they also lit fires, and we have the fires, and we can like lighting the fires of the tiki torches invokes the spirit of Shakespeare. And it just, fire makes stuff better, right? So there's that sense of that when we did the candlelight run, with the added excited sense of, is this a little illegal?
We had the fire marshal.
We had two fire marshals, one for safety, one because they're like, can we get an extra ticket?
Yeah.
We had two fire marshals.
They said that and they liked it.
They loved it. They
loved it.
Yeah.
And it was totally safe. I mean, it was totally safe.
Great.
I've felt less safe in churches with a lot of candles lit all at the same time. No affront to churches, just saying we knew what we were doing when we set up that thing, more or less. And it was so unbelievable, because it is such a weird thing. It's sort of like when you go to a show and you see an actor smoking a real cigarette on stage, you're like, is that allowed? What the hell are they doing up there? Or like lighting off a real firework, like, oh, per jeepers, is that okay? It's this sense of like, I'm getting to do something exclusive and maybe a little bit bad.
Like, I just want to give like Ryan and Sophie a chance to give like a last thought, because I know you all are leaving to go to Whodunit rehearsal, segue plug, because we're doing virtual Whodunit, the improvised murder mystery, and so you all are going to go to rehearse for that. But I don't know if you have any last thoughts or last remembrances or anything you want to say.
I'd love to give a shout out to Cynthia, who's not here.
Yay!
Jenny Collins did our
Yay!
backgrounds, and the different themes that she came up with for all the major characters were so beautiful and just provided an amazing underscoring for the whole show.
Very good, Sophie. Thank you. Give them props where they do. Yes.
We should try to say out loud the names of all the people who were involved in this show and not here. Just saying.
Yes.
At some point.
They're alive, but they're just not here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jay Daly played Gertrude, and she was incredible. Matt
MJ
Fraser.
and Ben and so many people
Claudius,
that
Ben
were
Christie
here to be
played
able to make it
Laertes.
tonight. I miss them
Mhm.
and appreciate all that they did.
Mhm.
Yes.
But yeah,
Absolutely. So you
Yay.
all can like jump out when you need to. I just have like one or two other things I want to talk about before I let everybody go. This is like like silly side note, but like Carson, Osric. We really talk a little bit about Osric because
Hey.
that was a really hard scene for me to play. Let's make it about Osric, but really about me. That scene was really hard for me to play.
Yeah.
Because you were so committed to being so like snotty to me, and you had a hat that had like a really big feather on it.
Only when I forgot my real hat. Well, no, I had feather the whole time, but
That was great.
the backup hat had this string that kept falling in front of my face, and I know that you told me about that before. Like the whole time, just hanging there.
That was great.
I just thought you did a really great job. Like it's one of those characters that is there. The people who are like really into Hamlet, like they're looking for Osric because Osric is such like a snooty little character. And, like,
He's
it's
so
so
Horatio
good. I love
hated
him.
Osric.
shady.
Yes.
I had no opinion aside from threatening and merciless.
I just appreciate that Horatio gets his own foil.
Oh
Yes.
yeah.
No, Hamlet gets, I was almost going to say Macduff, and that's not right.
tip
You
of
know?
the hat.
Hamlet gets Laertes.
A tip of the hat to Shakespeare,
Uh,
who was like, even Horatio deserves to have someone who's.
yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to step away, everyone.
Hi, Ryan.
Wonderful. It was wonderful.
Good to see you,
Bye,
Ryan.
Ryan.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
Sophie.
Have a great
It's
Bye,
been
everyone.
so nice to
Who's done it?
see you all.
Goodbye.
Can't wait to see you on stage again soon.
Yay.
Yes. I just want to like really, well, briefly, I guess, Rebecca, I need to talk about the floor for a second.
We can talk about the floor.
Can we talk about that floor though?
Mhm, we can talk about the floor.
This is one of the only plays that I can say that if after the fact people came up to me and were like, oh, that play was great, but the floor, I wouldn't feel insulted because that floor was a masterpiece.
I would like to also let you know that this is one of the only plays that we have ever purposefully saved a chunk of masonite. So there is a piece of the Hamlet floor that purposefully still exists.
Yay.
Yes.
So that's some secret
break it?
information.
Thank
Yeah.
goodness.
I mean, I think it's, Tammy, I'm glad you brought it up because I think that also speaks to what made the production work so well is that like instantly people walked in and saw, like, I know this is illusion,
Yeah.
but I'm also,
Nice.
it's so well done that I am taking it for what it's representing.
Nice. Yes.
So like the stage illusion is absolutely transparent, but also just, you accept it.
Yeah.
Because it was so well done.
It's beautiful.
Can you describe this in case somebody's watching this that doesn't know what we're talking about? Why are we talking about the floor of this stage?
Well, all right. So the easiest way to describe this is the graphic for this event. As some of you may have seen if you're clicking on this and watching, is sort of the word Hamlet, and it's fiery, and it's got this sort of gridded geometric sort of marbly cracked looking thing in the background. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look at the logo for the event. It's the easiest way I can describe it is just like do that. But it was probably, what was it, like a 16 by 25 foot stage, or a 12 by 25 foot. No, it was smaller. It was like a 12, right? Because it was 3. Okay, it was a 12. It was like a 12 by 25 foot stage, which both sounds huge and small at the same time because it's a runway. And it was the only time in the theater that we have actually utilized the a back wall that is usually always the stage wall as sort of this weird hallway kind of thrust stage, and the whole thing was painted as this geometric marble pattern that I got when I looked up castles in Denmark. And it took me probably 6 weeks total, which is unbelievable that I even had 6 weeks total to do this, because that never happens. Thank God for the Skriker being sort of our main stage outdoor show at that time. It was like, we just don't even have a show in the theater. And it was just this pattern of white, black, and red marble, and probably it wasn't fancy. It wasn't like a mural, but it was probably, as a set designer, one of the most wonderful moments of my career, just peeking quietly through the doors and seeing people like give stank eye to the stage and just look at it and kind of like look at their wife who dragged them to the show and go, what the hell is this? And touch it and try to figure out, like, what did they make this out of? What is this? And like in between, we had testing in the theater. So there were, I don't know, 100 high schoolers who were using the stage when all of the tape was down and was this thin little corner, like quarter-inch painter's tape that I used to make the grout lines that got ruined, and I had to do all sorts of stuff over. And the Wakefield Village Association was sort of setting up for Oktoberfest, which is a big event that the CTC sort of hosts and is involved in. And they had decided that year that it's like, can we get a big castle and a big pumpkin? So in the middle of painting the Hamlet set, I also had to sort of stop and use the set as the only big space that I had to paint all these other murals that had to go up at a different date. It was like, it was freaking crazy. And it was so complicated and so simple, and I was so excited, and I managed to hang a bunch of curtains from the ceiling from a probably should have been supportive beam with some fishing wire and a bunch of prayer, and
there was like
so
an iconic
cool.
to me, an iconic Rebecca photo was like, I don't know when this was, but it was like a tech week or something like that, and like we lost power and you're painting the stage still. Like we're all just going about our business, but Rebecca's gonna paint the stage because like she's still got a lot to do.
It
And
was
she's like,
Thursday of
"All
Tech
right, I
Week.
gotta
What the hell was I supposed to do?
Candlelight. It was freaking
There's
candlelight.
no lights on, and she's just like, I'm still going.
Does anybody have one of those things
crazy.
with a flashlight on the forehead so that I can keep going?
It's crazy.
Need a headlamp
Oh my
stack.
God. It was, I am so
Yeah,
proud of that
crazy.
set. And I'm so happy that part of it does still exist. No one will ever know where it is. If you don't know where it is, it's a secret. I know where it is.
I'm just happy to know that it still exists because it was really gorgeous. Was it just one like last little thing about it was that I feel like with you and set design a lot, it's you get the idea to do something, but you don't know how to do it. So part of the process is like figuring out how to do it. Was that the case here, or did you know how to do that?
So we were building the set. It was the day that we were constructing the set, right? Which meant that painting was starting tomorrow. And everybody was asking me, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And in my head, I had an idea of sort of a revamp of the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern set that we had done, because the Hamlet set, along with the show, was very much like the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern set, which was this long, narrow runway, which we did again and made an even longer, wider, but on both sides runway. And I had this idea that like, I'm just going to sort of do the same sort of cobblestone idea that I had before. And it was during the day that we were building the set that I was finally sort of had gotten asked that question enough time to know exactly what the cobblestones were going to look like that I started looking up castles in Denmark and found the pattern on the floor, that there is sort of this historical pattern in Denmark that has this crazy sort of octagonal, trapezoidal, square sort of marbly plaid texture on the floor. And I was finally able to say, like, okay, so tomorrow this is what I'm going to start. And it was probably a bad way to do that, but I'm really happy that I thought about it, because but the plan that I had was bad and I changed it at the last minute. It's not like I had no plan and then suddenly had a plan. It was like I have a plan and the plan is just the same plan that I had a year and a half ago. It's bad. So it was kind of like a, not knowing how to do it, but being like, okay, instead of doing something
happen.
That's just like a bunch of blobs, I'm just gonna have to get some real thin masking tape and make that happen, and not taking into account the million little problems that come with using 1/4-inch masking tape, which is a million. But it's not like I did anything on that set that was groundbreaking or amazing. It was really all just marble and granite texture, which is something that I've been doing for years. You know, and it was just having the advantage of sort of being able to spend that little bit of extra time while the Skriker was outside and not in the theater, being able to really put a bunch of details in it and map out this really strict geometric space and do something kind of complicated and advantageous. Not that I wasn't doing something complicated and advantageous before, but outside of my comfort zone, and then doing the cool reveal with the carpet rolling down and revealing Ophelia's grave, which was a part of that set that I totally forgot about, because I always think about it with the carpet rolled up, and that's the whole thing. But that there was this really sort of like bizarre moment while painting the set and like working on Ophelia's grave. I was like, is this some sort of bizarre metaphor for virginity? I'm so attached to all of this. I'm so upset. This is so beautiful. This is the best thing I've ever done. You know?
I have to tell you, this poor child came home in tears. Like, I can't tell you how many times during the course of this set, it was like, what are you crying about? I don't know.
It wasn't like it was. And a lot of it was
just so emotional.
Ophelia's Ophelia's runway, or Ophelia's soul patch, as I called it. It had a lot of names. That little strip of set that got revealed just got me real teary-eyed pretty much every day while I was working on it, because as cool as the set was, and as like, you know, maybe inconsequential as I think the reveal was compared to like the cool marble of the set, it was really, it felt like it was something to me. Not like a pun, but like a reveal of something important that we had been keeping there all along. And it made me so sad that Ophelia had to die before. Oh God. And,
emotional.
yeah, I was very, very, very emotionally attached to the set for a lot of reasons. Although I probably will comment that some of those days that I came home crying about the set probably were just my hands hurt. I kneeled all day long. It is hard. But I'm gonna stop talking about the set. It was cool. I'm very happy with it, but I'm gonna stop.
No, it was cool. I just I like to you know, you see something like that and it's really gorgeous. And part of this is like, you know, pulling back the curtain, so to speak, on what it takes. And like it was like blood, sweat, and freaking tears. It was like an emotional journey to make that. So thank you for doing that, because it was gorgeous.
Yeah.
You.
Tammy, could I have permission to commandeer your role for a second?
Sure.
Because as moderator, because you being the moderator means you haven't been able to ask yourself any questions about, and one thing that hasn't come up that I think is really missing in this discussion. I mean, you were the heart and soul of the show. I mean, it was possible because we had somebody capable of playing Hamlet, which is
Yes.
one of the most challenging and exhausting roles in the entire, history of theater. And one of the things that why I was so excited about being able to work with you on that show is that having worked with you in Macbeth and seeing you in shows, is that you sometimes seem so egoless as a performer. You're so generous and so just so dedicated to doing the role and to serving the play, and it's never about you. And you make it look kind of easy. And I just want, could you share with us, was it like for you night after night going through, it's just such an exhausting part and you were so totally committed to it. Did you, you never even appeared to be, I just thought, how can you not just be totally wrung out at the end of it? And you never seemed to be, but so what was that like? How did you get through it every night?
Nice.
Thank you for asking me that. I don't know. It's funny because that's how I approached this too. Is like I didn't want this like conversation to be just so centered on me talking all the time, because like the play was like that. But I run the theater now, so like it's like me.
Yeah, but if we're talking about Hamlet, we gotta see, what was it like to play Hamlet?
Absolutely.
I feel like very honored to have been able to do it. I feel I love the fact that it generated from coming out of Rosgill and playing that role like in a minor way, and then having to like flip the perspective on it and have it be like, okay, this is what Hamlet looks like to these people. Now this is what Hamlet looks like to Hamlet or whatever. So that was cool. I think like it's one of those things where if you look at it like a marathon sort of, I felt like very prepared. We knew like probably a year ahead that we were going to do Hamlet, and so I knew I was going to play the role, and so it was like in my mind I was prepared for it, and I had done different versions of Hamlet before in like smaller ways. And so I just felt very mentally prepared for it. But I don't, not to make it sound glib, but like I just kind of got into the zone of it. It was one of those things, like if you're in a marathon, you don't want to keep dwelling on the fact that like you're running a marathon and it's really tiring and exhausting. You just have to like run it. And my whole thing was just like with everybody else is to make him feel like a human being. And that was what I was really trying to do more than anything else, and to make it feel new to the audience, make it feel like they were watching something that was happening now rather than watching a canned version of something that happened 400 years ago. So I think having that drive me is kind of what propelled me through. And like, honestly, like working with each of you, it like angered me because I felt like I didn't have to carry the whole show. Like I carried my part of it, but then you each carried your part of it. And when I was doing scenes with Rebecca and Laura, like it was like we were carrying each other. I didn't get to do that many scenes with Ari, but like, Getting to a Nunnery is like a really hard scene.
They're pretty intense.
The ones that you do are important.
So like, but like she was like right freaking there with me, like matching me, matching the intensity the whole time. And so that was a really great gift too. So I felt a responsibility to the show. I felt like I had to do a good job, and I felt like we had to make it human, and that's what we did. So I'm really, really proud and satisfied with what we did.
Should be.
Nice.
I said during, toward the end of the run, I know I've said to people, I've never been involved in a project of that scope that was so frictionless, that was so like, that I never felt at any point, do I really have to keep doing this? Like from the first, not even the first rehearsal, from the first audition to the last performance, it was just like it never felt like work. It was just pure enjoyment the whole time.
And I think that says something about our cast dynamic, because it's a heavy play, like in so many ways. It's a lot, like trying to take on this play, and it's really sad. And there's funny moments, but like we all had a heavy burden to bear, I think, it went with the play, and it never got to us. The pressure never got to us. I think that's good. I think I got in my head a little bit, but I tried to just stay as even keeled as I could, and just like let the rest of you like take off, like, you know, my burdens from me when I needed to. So yeah, I think it was a real good gift. And I think like you don't get, people maybe do different productions of Hamlet over the course of their life, maybe because it's a commonly produced play, but I feel like I'm fine. I never have to do it again because I'm so satisfied with what we were able to do. So because I feel like if I ever did another production of Hamlet, like it wouldn't come to this. It wouldn't be as.
It's not gonna feel like this.
It wouldn't feel like
No.
this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's just
So.
so much richness.
Yeah. So thank you all for sitting here and talking to me about it. Does anybody have any last memories, favorite
I
scenes?
would just like to say, like, I don't know, as like a like thrown into last minute stage manager who had really no experience with backstage, anything to do with theater, and or in my lifetime, any kind of like theatrical, like anything to do with like Shakespeare at all. And this experience was one of the most wonderful experiences of my entire life, because it really opened up so many doors for me. Like as far as literature, Shakespeare, it helped me really, really, really understand a piece of work that deserved to be understood in a way that really touched me in so many ways. So many ways, like many of you can't even comprehend. And then on top of that, to be able to work with the most amazing people, to be backstage and see so many aspects of how a work gets put to the people, you know, like here we are presenting this to you, and it's like you don't even comprehend the littlest bit of what it takes to make this happen. And the work of the most amazing people, like the MJ, the Ryan, the like, oh my God, just like I said, like every single person, I can't even begin to think of the top of my head, that were involved in this play, Ari, and it's like just so many people that made this simple and real, and portrayable to the general people. Just like, here is Hamlet. It's like, it's not as complex as you think it is. It's real.
Yeah.
And the way that you people really made it real and just so entertaining for like what I consider myself is a general Q public person, okay? I don't have a lot of theater background. And for all of you amazing people to be able to put this together for the general Q public to understand and to be entertained by, to such an amazing level that the people can't even comprehend what a gift they've gotten.
I feel like one of the best compliments that we got was
what a gift.
I feel like one of the best compliments we would get, and maybe you all got the same compliments, but like we would come off stage and people would feel, you would feel the energy of the audience, that they felt energized
I
by
got
watching
it.
it. And that they
I got it.
I
I
understood.
got it.
Wow, this play is really
Yes.
sad, or this play
Yes.
is really was funny, or wow, like I didn't
Yes.
realize Hamlet was such a human being. I didn't
It
realize
was
Ophelia had so much going on.
amazing.
It's like you didn't
Yes.
realize that. Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
You brought that to the people in tenfold, and it was amazing to be part of that.
I've been plenty of
amazing.
go ahead,
All
go ahead,
of you.
Rebecca.
I give the most amazing
Christine,
kudos
your
to
daughter's
all
trying to
of you
talk.
that are here and the
Mama.
ones that aren't here. To all of the people that still aren't here that freaking deserve it, because there were so many people that made this such an amazing show.
And that is important too. Before we log off, one more time,
Yes.
I'm going to say Matt Fraser as Claudius, MJ Daly as Gertrude, Cynthia Burke, Cynthia Burke and Jenny Collins working on music stuff. Who am I forgetting? Because I'm going to get
Kennedy.
Oh my God, Laura Kennedy is Guildenstern. Laura Kennedy is Guildenstern 1,000 times. I promise you I'm going to be bad at going past here because I'm going to get started confused with the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern instead of be like, Sammy, Neil. It's like, no, that was the wrong show. There.
There's so many people in this show that deserve to be acknowledged.
There's
so
also
many. All of you. All of you.
Ben Christie. Ben Christie as Laertes.
Dalton.
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 Yes. And
Oh my God,
Cynthia and Jen Collins and all of you.
Who else?
I thank you all.
Ben Christie, Dalton.
for
Oh my
letting
God,
me be a
Dalton
part
was
of
such
this.
a sweet kid. I'm
All
so
of
happy
you.
that we had him a part of that process. I hope that he's well. Oh
And of
my
course,
God.
Chris Simpson, who directed
Chris Simpson,
the play.
obviously directing. We don't have to. He gets talked about.
We'll get a solo interview.
Yeah. Whatever.
I love you all. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of your little world. I thank you to the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, everybody, for really putting your heart and soul into this show. I think, like for me, like I played Hamlet, so I had to put my heart and soul into it. But like, I think everybody just worked so hard to make this a complete experience for the audience from beginning to end. So I really appreciate that, and it's something I will always cherish. And I think we just, I don't know, we did a version of this play that's been done a million bajillion times, and it's like kind of a definitive version, I think.
We did the best version of the best
throw in one thing
play
I
in the
wanted-
entire English language.
Can I share one thing? My I think I've mentioned this to a couple of you. My brother and sister-in-law came up from New York to watch it. And they're both professional actors, and they've done Broadway work. They've worked with Richard Foreman, toured Europe with the Richard Foreman Company and stuff. And my sister-in-law told me after the show, she said she was in tears at the end of it. She said first she cried at the end of Chris's introduction because she knew, she knows what, how the theater, I told her about the history of the theater and its mission and all that. And she said, she found it moving just because it was a moving production anyway, but also moved by just the kind of purity of it. She said, it's like, it reminded her, no, this is really what theater is, that when you do it professionally on a big budget sometimes, and you're making a living at it, you lose sight of the, like I said, the essence of it, the ability of theater to really connect people. And the fact that it's, the CTC is a is about being there for the community and creating community. And she said she felt that through the whole production, and she was really moved by it. So, okay, that was good. She's like, the jaded professional theater person saying,
nice.
I miss feeling this way about theater all the time.
Yeah.
It's you all.
Yes. I think that's a great way to end it. And we look forward to more theater, and as we go on into the summer and beyond, and carrying that tradition of connection and community, and just putting our heart and soul into everything we do here at the CTC. So thank everybody for watching this, and thank you to my beloved fellow cast members of Hamlet for sharing some memories. Thank you. Good night.
Thank
Thank
Good to
you.
see
Good night,
all.
everyone.
This was
Night.
fun. Good